He was never supposed to be the hero. He was the warning, the whisper of what happens when man meets monster, when science dances too close to sorrow, when the quietest man carries the loudest rage. The Hulk was never just green. He was grief painted with power. He didn't want fame. He didn't chase justice. He didn't wear a symbol on his chest or shout slogans to the sky. He ran, from labs, from armies, from himself. And in that running, we saw something real. A battle not between good and evil, but between control and collapse. He cracked the earth with his fists, but cracked our hearts with his silence. He broke buildings, but never wanted to break anyone. He was strength built on suffering, a god with no temple, a weapon begging not to be fired, a soul stitched together with trembling hands and unresolved guilt. But then came the twist, the rewrite. The version that laughed instead of roared, that explained instead of erupted, that smiled through the pain without ever showing us how it was healed. The fury faded, the danger disappeared, and in its place stood a caricature wearing clothes that never quite fit. What was once unpredictable became scripted. What once felt tragic became trivial. He was softened, marketed, declawed for comfort, and in doing so, they didn't just evolve him, they erased him, left behind a shadow of what once was, and a silence where the scream should have been. In this video, we explore how the Hulk was dismantled, not by villains, but by vision, not by story, but by strategy. We uncover how Marvel took one of its most complex creations and hollowed him into comic relief. We trace the moments where rage became routine, and examine what was lost when they chose peace over power. The Hulk began as something primal, a manifestation of trauma, a monster shaped by pain. He was never meant to be polished, never meant to be safe. His chaos was his truth. His fury was his language. And in that fury, there was always a strange kind of honesty. We watched a man haunted by what he became, running from the military, from friends, from himself. Bruce Banner wasn't just a scientist. He was a ticking time bomb with a conscience, a soul constantly at war with its shadow. And every moment he breathed was a moment borrowed from peace. And for a while, that duality made him fascinating. The line between hero and horror never clear. He didn't want to save the world. He wanted to stop destroying it. That tension kept us leaning in, waiting to see which side would win. And that uncertainty gave the Hulk more humanity than most of the Avengers. But something shifted. Somewhere between the Avengers and the Endgame. The edge dulled, the sorrow softened. The rage that once tore cities apart was suddenly cracking jokes in a diner, and no one seemed to question why. The fire that once made him iconic had dimmed behind a casual smile. The Hulk we knew, the one forged in agony, began to fade, replaced by someone who smiled more, thought more, brooded less. And while evolution is natural, what we got felt like abandonment instead. A ghost of greatness wearing a lab coat and pretending everything was fine. It didn't happen overnight, but Marvel Studios slowly dismantled what made the Hulk unique. They took a story about inner torment and rewrote it into one of quirky balance. As if Banner's demons could be solved off-screen. As if a lifetime of pain could be resolved with a montage we never saw. There was no moment of reckoning, no breaking point, just a throwaway line that he and Hulk had figured things out. And with that, a decade of internal struggle was silenced, reduced to a gag in a diner booth. It felt like watching a fire be smothered under studio polish. They robbed us of the climax, of the confrontation, of the transformation that should have been earned. Instead, they handed us Professor Hulk, a character without conflict. A shell wearing both skins, but neither heart. A compromise that satisfied no one who truly cared about the story. The rawness, the unpredictability, the violence masked in vulnerability. All gone, in its place. Polished exposition and forced levity. The Hulk became a mascot, a meme, a punchline with no punch. His anger turned to irony. His grief turned to grin. It wasn't Thanos who broke the Hulk. It was Marvel. In boardrooms and drafts and reshoots, they traded fear for familiarity. And in doing so, stripped him of everything that made him unforgettable. And fans were left applauding something that never fully showed up. Banner was never just a brain, and Hulk was never just a brute. Together, they were a tragedy, a living metaphor for shame, for isolation, for the cost of survival, in a world that demands perfection. They were the embodiment of a man torn in two, with no safe way forward. When Hulk was scared to come out in Infinity War, it wasn't cowardice, it was trauma. The fallout of being used, abused, reduced to a weapon one too many times. That silence spoke volumes, but they never let it echo. It was a scream buried under the noise of the next spectacle. They moved on too quickly, ignoring the wound, ignoring the weight. And what could have been a soulful arc about trust, identity, and healing became background noise to someone else's story. Another subplot lost in the rush to get to the next big thing. Banner should have unraveled, should have fought, should have bled to bridge that gap. But instead, we were told to accept a smiling scientist in a hoodie as the resolution. No reckoning. No redemption. Just retcon. It was a finale with no build-up. An answer to a question they forgot to ask. It hurts because Hulk was once the heart of Marvel's pain. The one who never asked for power. The one who feared himself more than the enemy. And now he's a cameo. A footnote. A memory of what could have been. A silent monument to an arc, abandoned mid-sentence. There was a time when Hulk was mythic. When his roar could silence armies. When his leaps cracked mountains. When his presence alone shifted the energy of an entire scene. He was power incarnate, untamed and unyielding. A living storm in motion with no one brave enough to chase it. No one moved like him. No one fought like him. He wasn't graceful. He was elemental. A living force of grief, wrath, and misunderstood purpose. Every frame he filled carried weight. Every fight felt like an earthquake. Every punch left an imprint on the screen and on our memories. And yet, he still made us feel, not just fear, but empathy. Behind the green, behind the growl, was a child reaching for control. A man begging to be seen. A soul stitched together with trembling hands and haunted dreams. That contradiction gave him depth no CGI could replicate. That was his gift. Not strength, but depth. Not destruction, but the desire to be more than what the world saw. Hulk reminded us that even monsters feel, that even rage can cry. And in that cry, we found something real. Something broken but beautifully alive. But now, that presence is gone. That awe erased. We are left with echoes, with cameos, with clever lines and awkward smiles. And the silence where OR used to live. A silence that says more than all the green screen spectacle ever could. But not all is lost, because stories evolve, and legacies can be reclaimed. The Hulk we loved still lingers beneath the surface, waiting, dormant, not defeated, just silenced. And silence can always be broken. There is still room for the rage to return, for the sorrow to speak again, for the fractured soul of Banner to step back into the spotlight, with purpose, with pain, with poetry. The door was never closed, just ignored. A world war is whispered, a savage future teased. And maybe, just maybe, Marvel will listen to the fans, to the silence they created, and bring back the heart behind the havoc. Because not every hero shines. Some still burn, because beneath every punch, every roar, every broken wall, was a plea, a whisper for peace in a world that only saw threat. That story deserves a final act, one not skipped, but earned, one that respects the scars it once forgot. Hope lives in potential, in the unwritten pages. And for the Hulk, the greatest chapter may still be ahead, if they dare to tell it with honesty, with weight, with fury, and with the respect that pain deserves. But if they don't, if this is all we get, then the Hulk's downfall wasn't just narrative, it was symbolic. A reminder that not every hero gets justice, not every arc gets closure, and some stories fade not because they end, but because they're abandoned. He began as rage incarnate, a force of nature sculpted by pain. He begged to be understood, and when he was finally heard, they muted him, gave him glasses, took his scream away, and smiled like it was progress. And in doing so, they didn't just rewrite a character. They erased a catharsis. The one who broke the mold, who shattered tropes, who made masculinity vulnerable, was left unfinished. A myth with its heart cut out for laughs. The tragedy is not that he became gentle. It's that they rushed the moment, skipped the scars, ignored the journey that made that gentleness mean something. They took the easy ending and called it growth. They skipped the weight and kept the costume. The Hulk was destroyed, not by an enemy, not by fate, but by comfort, by hesitation, by the fear of going too deep. And in that silence, the tragedy remains unfinished, waiting for someone brave enough to roar again and remind the world what power really costs.